For almost 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II has ruled the United Kingdom and Commonwealth with distinction. But one day, there will be a changing of the old guard at Buckingham Palace, as the Queen's eldest son is waiting tentatively in the wings. Ever since Prince Charles was born on November the 14th, 1948, he has been a monarch in waiting, training and learning everything to one day fulfil his destiny.
He's going to be one of the most experienced kings to take the throne.
In this programme, Royal Insiders speak about the Prince of Wales, his triumphs and tribulations, his successes and shortfalls, and why he is the man who will one day be our king. When his time does eventually come, Prince Charles will be the oldest sovereign to come to the throne in the 1,000-year history of the British monarchy. This is a momentous feat to say the least. But is it what the people want? It is no secret that Prince Charles is not the most popular royal, with many favouring his eldest son, Prince William.
He has the elixir of youth, if you like. You know, he's young, he's vibrant, he's got a beautiful wife, they've got 3 kids, they're the nuclear family. The perfect family. Prince Charles, you know, is obviously a bit long in the tooth now, and he has a history of, well, one might say tragedy, certainly the broken marriage, the death of Diana, all that's gone before. By definition, I suppose, people go towards Prince William because he's new and he's fresh.
Because he's got youth on his side, and because he's so obviously physically Diana's son, and I think that counts for an awful lot. And I suppose the other main reason is that he's untainted by any of the scandals that have affected other senior members of the royal family, I suppose in particular his father.
The Prince of Wales has been the subject of several personal and public controversies throughout his lifetime.
I think the affair with Camilla Parker Bowles is probably the most damaging to Prince Charles's reputation.
The concept of them both making public statements in the press to broadcasters, with Charles speaking to Jonathan Dimbleby and then Princess Diana doing the infamous broadcast interview with Martin Bashir, which is still in the headlines now over 25 years later.
Charles can't escape from that, and how Charles managed that relationship, how he is perceived to have treated his wife, it is haunting him to this day.
But more controversial is this sense of betrayal, really, not only of Princess Diana, but equally the British public, this idea that we were lied to for a long time.
It's got to be everything to do with Diana and Camilla in terms of the public perception of scandal. What I think is probably the most scandalous from a royal perspective is his foray into cabinet and government policy. So there was this sort of string of letters that he wrote to cabinet, various cabinet ministers about fishing policy and, regulation and all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably, from a royal perspective, the most scandalous, because that's him intervening. And, what Elizabeth has really set herself apart as a neutral public figure. And Charles has consistently not been that.
When Charles does eventually inherit the crown, he will also become the head of the Commonwealth. After the decline of the British Empire, the Commonwealth of Nations grew in popularity to become the modern collection of 54 countries that it is today. As the current head of the Commonwealth, the Queen provides the foundation with stability and unity. However, with Barbados' recent announcement that they intend to declare their independence,
Barbadians want a Barbadian head of state. This is the ultimate statement of confidence in who we are and what we are capable of achieving.
It begs the question of whether other nations will leave under Prince Charles's reign, or if no changes will ensue.
I think that what Barbados is doing will be replicated in a number of other countries, such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, perhaps as well. I'm very much of the opinion that if I were Australian, shall we say, I would want a homegrown head of states. So I think that there will be big changes when we have King Charles III. I mean, there won't be immediate, but I think that there will be changes, and that the number of realms of which he is king will reduce. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean they won't stay in the Commonwealth, because republics are still very much part of the Commonwealth. The head of state for these countries will change, and I think that's sort of a natural progression, and is something that is very much a decision for the people of those countries, as the Queen admits and as Prince Charles admits. So, but it seems highly likely that that there won't be as many realms early in the new reign.
As the longest reigning monarch in British history, Queen Elizabeth has been an unwavering symbol of moral integrity and stability for almost 7 decades. The Queen's time on the throne has been led by a steadfast but quiet dignity, resulting in few to no self-made scandals. The only challenges she has faced have been largely caused at the hands of her children.
I mean, just recently you've got the obvious scandal with her son Prince Andrew and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and the fallout that has been and made on the royal family has been absolutely tremendous. I mean, he has been forced to stand back from his public role. He's been forced to step away from his offices at Buckingham Palace, even though the Queen is standing by him privately. I don't think that they've had calls to make public statements on his behalf, and that's very, very telling.
In contrast, when Prince Charles does come to the throne, it is highly likely he will need to rely on the popularity of his son, Prince William, and his young family to bolster his public image.
Well, there's no doubt about it. It's much easier if your kids are popular and they're going out there and attracting a new generation to the monarchy. Because I've always thought that actually one of the biggest problems or enemies of monarchy, if you like, threats to the monarchy, is apathy. And during my long career as royal correspondent, I observed a lot of apathy, particularly amongst young people. And I think that does still exist. But William and Harry drew a new generation into royal affairs. I think that the same may well be true of William and George in the future, when we have a very old King Charles on the throne.
Since Prince George was born in 2013, the image of the next 3 heirs has been widely circulated. It is a projection of reliability, strength and continuance for when the Queen is no longer with us, much as was done with Queen Victoria and her heirs in 1894. Following the death of his mother, Prince Charles will automatically be proclaimed king, as is his divine right. But he will not be crowned until a later date at his coronation. As Charles will be following the longest reigning monarch in British history, and will likely not sit on the throne for a long period of time, the question begs, will he be a successful and memorable king, or will he be eclipsed by previous rulers?
He's got one heck of an act to follow, hasn't he? I do think that with the Queen, young people don't think about her, I know, but nevertheless she's been there all of our lives. Practically everyone in this country, almost everyone, if you're under 95, she's just been there. She's been the backbone, just this stable force with governments that come and go and political scandals that happen, and yet the Queen is always there, steadfast. And I think we saw that in the broadcast she made during the pandemic, the beginning, and I found that enormously comforting to have this great-grandmother figure sitting there saying, we will meet again.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
I think when Charles becomes king, there's going to be a moment of maximum weakness for the monarchy. People, whatever they think of the monarchy, whether you support it or whether you don't support it, you tend to have a lot of respect for the Queen herself and for everything that she's done, her public duty, the fact that she's devoted her life to this particular job as head of state since she was 25 years old in 1952. The change is going to be a moment, I think, when people will question, what is this monarchy? Why do we have it? why is it passing to this man who's now in his 70s? Why are we changing our stamps and our money and all the rest of it? And I think there will be a lot of questions when there's a change at the very top. As for what he will be like as king, I don't think people will have the same affection for him that they have currently for the Queen. But then you've only got to go back 20 years or so when people didn't have that same affection for the Queen. When she was younger, it was her mother, the Queen Mother, who was the grandmother of the nation, if you like, and the one who people adored because of her age. That's now transferred to the Queen, so that's fine. I just don't think that will reach Prince Charles for some time, and it will. That's why I think the first 2 or 3 years of his reign will be some of the most dangerous for the monarchy.
I think if we get into the issue of who deserves to be king or not, or queen or not, we would have knocked out quite a few on the line of succession over the centuries. I mean, the way the monarchy works, I think, you've just got to take the rough with the smooth. I think our system is infinitely fairer. It's more stable than those systems occupied by the European crowned heads, where when their monarch gets old, they quietly shuffle him or her off, and they pick a younger model. We've seen that in Holland, we've seen it in Spain. And I just think that sort of undermines the whole principle of hereditary monarchy. I mean, if you start choosing who you want to be your monarch, well, why not go beyond the royal family? Let's choose someone else to be king. And I think one of the reasons why the House of Windsor and if you like, all the royal houses before that have succeeded and have remained in public affection for 1,000 years, really, is because of this sort of sense of longevity and continuity that we alone seem to have, and that other monarchies don't. We'll have to see what kind of king the Prince of Wales will be. He might turn out to be a very benevolent and successful king. It might be a very short reign, a bit like King Edward VII, who had barely 10 years. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was something like that. And there may be something about that Charles brings to the position that the public will infinitely warm to.
In the unlikely chance that Prince Charles would immediately pass his role as king to his son, constitutional history would be repeated, as it would echo the abdication crisis of 1936, which saw King Edward VIII step down and be replaced by his brother, King George VI.
A few hours ago, I discharged my last duty as King and Emperor. And now that I have been succeeded by my brother, the Duke of York, my first words must be to declare my allegiance to him. This I do with all my heart.
Abdication's a dirty word. The Queen still blames that event on her father's premature death, obviously plunging George VI onto the throne when he wasn't really prepared for it and had a speech impediment and all the rest of it. Didn't exactly do wonders for his health, not least having to be a wartime leader alongside Sir Winston Churchill.
The story of the abdication is expertly told in the film The King's Speech.
To stand calm and firm and united in this time of trial. The task will be hard. There may be dark days ahead, and war can no longer be confined to the battlefield. But we can only do the right as we see the right.
Whilst there is no British precedence of a son taking over the throne from his father for reasons other than death, in 2014, the Spanish monarchy experienced the abdication of King Juan Carlos I, who was succeeded by his son, King Felipe VI.
So there is a precedent, but of course it's not just male on male, it's male on female. The situation also arises in the Netherlands. Abdication is quite a common practice there. It's highly unlikely to be repeated, I would suggest, anytime soon in the UK, because it just isn't something that the Queen will ever do, and I would suggest that it's most unlikely that Prince Charles would ever consider abdication either.
The Duke of Cambridge has made no secret of his desire for his father to rightfully inherit the throne before he does. One of the many reasons for this is that he and Catherine have 3 children under the age of 10, and it is known that William would prefer to avoid the heavy burden of early kingship and instead be present to raise his young family in a way that has rarely been seen throughout royal history.
I don't think William would ever want to stand in his father's way of getting, as Diana always called it, the top job. I think he wants it. I think he well wants to be king, and William wants him to be king. And I'm quite sure that William, who from his early childhood has wrestled with the prospect of kingship, found it. I remember Diana sitting with Diana in her room, in her sitting room, saying, and she said William finds the burden, the thought of the burden of kingship, it weighs very heavily on his young shoulders. But he will be okay, she said, and he will be okay.
I don't think Prince William would want for his father to give up the throne in his favour, because I don't necessarily think Prince William is desperate to be king right now, with 3 children under 7, and difficulty already balancing public and private life. The Cambridges, perhaps rightly, were criticised in the early days of their marriage for being a bit work shy and not taking on enough engagements. And I think they took the collective decision that they had to put immediate family before the family firm. And I think in 2021, lots of people can identify with that and empathise with this idea that, unlike the royals of yesteryear, you do want to be there for your children and tuck them in at night and read them bedtime stories, rather than sort of having them brought up on the nursery floor.
You look at William and Kate and how they've been, how they've treated their 2 roles, not only the role of duty for the country, for the crown, but also their role as parents. And certainly they don't necessarily want to do your early morning jobs because they like to do the school run. They've kept their children very, very much out the public eye. You look at how William and Harry were photographed a lot when they were younger, and I think the Cambridges saw that and thought that they didn't want that for their children. But listen, they're still young people. They're still 38 and 39. They have a young family. I'm sure they're enjoying them, seeing them grow up without too much responsibility. And undoubtedly, if William was to become king, then that comes with an extra level of responsibility. So yeah, certainly they are enjoying these moments of bringing up their children.
As modern parents, Prince William and Catherine have broken the mould when it comes to raising their 3 small children. They are both hard-working senior royals who have launched successful projects which shine a light on everything from homelessness to racism.
Catherine is able to draw attention to projects in the way that perhaps other members of the royal family, male or female, aren't able to do.
The image of the Cambridge family is being used by the Palace Press Office to boost morale after the departures of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the Duke of York. The stability provided by the royals was also emphasised during Christmas in 2020, when the new 7 senior royals were presented alongside the Queen.
The Queen was demonstrating that, yes, there have been problems this year in the royal family. There have been scandals, there have been rifts, but fundamentally, the core members are still there, they're still working, and they are still, they're not going anywhere.
These staged photo opportunities are quite symbolic and quite meaningful and quite deliberate. There was one back in, I think it was the Diamond Jubilee, when they met the principals on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, and everyone said, well, we're used to seeing 20 people on the balcony. But it was a statement then that the monarchy should be slimmed down, will be slimmed down, and that there are key figures. Now, those key figures now, following the scandal around Prince Andrew, and we don't see him in public hardly at all anymore, and Harry and Meghan having departed for America, the new thing about that photo was seeing, I think, Edward and Sophie so prominent. And I think the Countess of Wessex has really come into her own in recent months and years, particularly since Harry and Meghan have departed. So I think those 8 principal figures were indeed a statement that this is the core monarchy. There's been some scandals, yes, there's been some people disappearing, But we're still here, and we've still got enough of us to go around. So I think it was very meaningful.
The Prince of Wales has done so much good, from improving the lives of disadvantaged young people with the Prince's Trust to encouraging the UK production of organic food. But this has often been outshone by scandal. Since Prince Charles's marriage to Camilla Parker Bowles in 2005, he has undergone a positive shift in his public image.
Harking back to sort of the late 90s, his reputation was absolutely battered. People were talking about him being passed over for the crown, whether it would skip a generation and go to William, something which was unheard of at the time. And I think that would be unheard of now, really. I think that certainly Charles has worked hard at it. It's been quite a slog. I don't think the public really took to the way that he had treated his marriage, the sanctity of marriage, how his relationship had faltered. His reputation was in tatters at one stage, but he got down to work. I think that he treated his relationship with Camilla with kid gloves in the first instance, and then the public warmed to them as a couple over quite some time. And now you look at the situation where he is really revered.
These characters in the story, Charlie.
In all circles, not only the royal but the British public, but also sort of in the climate change and environmental aspect all across the world. And I think he worked very, very hard at that.
To mark the 50th year of his environmental campaigning, the Prince launched Terra Carta, a global pledge to inspire companies to be more sustainable.
We've forgotten sometimes, I think, that we are part of nature. So what we do to the world around us, we are doing totally to ourselves. We can't go on, I think, equivocating on this and just expect us to test the world ultimately to destruction before you can prove that you have destroyed it. It is climate change. That's pointless to me.
He really has made a huge impact on society, I think, and on our, not just society, but on our actual sort of landscape. You know, and he's been involved in things like sort of urban regeneration and rural regeneration. He and you know, if you follow him around as I have done, he's just like a dynamo. You know, like a Duracell bunny. He doesn't stop for cups of coffee. He doesn't stop for lunch. He runs from one engagement to the next. He's utterly, utterly driven.
Historically, the Prince of Wales title has been marred by controversy and inappropriate behaviour. Previous holders, such as King George IV, King Edward VII and King Edward VIII, all fell victim to this stereotype, exhibiting everything from extramarital affairs to befriending national enemies.
I think that Charles was rather better at, shall we say, keeping it in his trousers than previous Prince of Wales, who seemed unable to go past the bedroom without hopping in with some woman. I mean, think of Edward the Seventh with actresses. You loved actresses, didn't you? Sarah Bernhardt, Lily Langtry, and then of course Alice Keppel, very famously the great-grandmother, I think, of Camilla. So there is a history of Prince of Wales as being playboys.
Edward VIII particularly, even before the abdication crisis, was sort of considered this playboy. There has always been a role for sort of the Prince of Wales as the playboy and the philanderer, perhaps because as eldest child they've just felt that they don't need to do much with their lives because they know they're going to be king anyway, so they may as well just be wastrels on the public purse. But obviously that's something that they could get away with in yesteryear, but that wouldn't stand up to scrutiny now.
I think from all the Prince of Waleses I know, I'd say this one has achieved by far and away the greatest. I mean, yes, George IV, he might have built Buckingham Palace, which allowed Queen Victoria to move in there. But I think no Prince of Wales other than this one has shaped the role in quite the way the Prince has. And it's a difficult role as well. You're not monarch, you're waiting for the top job, but actually the top job involves your mum having to die. It's very, very bizarre sort of set of circumstances that are put before him.
Prince Charles has redefined the role of the Prince of Wales, linking it to public service and duty rather than scandal.
Charles is an exemplary Prince of Wales. Of course, he had a few girlfriends, but we all wanted him to have girlfriends. We were all chasing after him to see who was going to be the next queen.
Despite the scandals during his marriage, about his private life, about his affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, he has not been a philanderer. You know, I've followed him, I've seen the work that he's done, I've spoken to the people whose lives he has changed. I mean, I would put him high on the list as most effective Prince of Wales.
He's been in that job for an awful long time, and it's always going to be with its pitfalls. If you're doing the same job, you need to learn from experience. Of course, there are going to be definite ways that he wished he had done things differently, perhaps in his marriage, perhaps in the way that he'd approached the job at times. I think that he is a man who is very strong-willed. I think he's had to learn to adapt to the job and to adapt to the way that the public has received him at times. I'm sure that he didn't feel that he was getting the respect he deserved at one point, but he's actually adapted to be more personal. And to take things on board and to be more of a people person, and definitely that's because of the amount of time that he's been in the job.
In 2022, the Queen will achieve a landmark 70 years as sovereign, with Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee being the first one celebrated in British history. Despite this, the royal rumour mill is constantly churning out false stories that the Queen is on the verge of retiring or abdicating in favour of her son. Unless the Queen becomes unfit to rule in any way, it is likely she will reign until her dying day, as she proclaimed in her speech to the Commonwealth on her 21st birthday in 1947.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
She knows that she's taken her coronation oath before God and that she is there until her dying day. And I think she's at one with that, because that's how her predecessors have worked it, and we perhaps look at the closest example of somebody as equally long serving in Queen Victoria, and on you carry on through good times and bad.
But there are continuing questions over whether or not she might choose to formally step back from her main duties. For example, not go to the state opening of Parliament, for example, or other things that she would literally just hand over to Charles, Prince Charles, and he would be king in all but name. So that would effectively be a regency. He would be the Prince Regent and she'd be this sort of retired monarch, but she would still be effectively the head of state. That's possible, and although talk was that it would happen when she was 95 years old, I mean, that's coming up this year. And I just think it's a very unstable time. People want continuity at the moment. I don't think they'd want their Queen telling them that she was stepping back in such a significant way.
I've been reporting on the royals for more than 30 years, and the rumours always go around. She's going to abdicate, either because of all the scandals that were going on, she just wants to walk away, or because she's ill, or because she's elderly. And throughout, at every great moment in history, every jubilee or wedding anniversary, she reiterates that, this is a job for life. You have to remember the Queen is a very religious woman. Very religious, and she believes this is her God-given duty to be queen, and that is for life.
The palace, of course, wants to push back against these sorts of suggestions, because they don't want to give the public any idea that there's anything wrong with the Queen, which could be destabilising in itself, but also the Queen's entire shtick over the years has been this steadfast determination to do her duty and to carry on with the work and to keep calm and carry on, as the tea towels put it. So I think it would do quite bad damage to her reputation to be seen to be kind of shirking. And that sounds unbelievable to say of a nonagenarian, because I appreciate that most members of the public would say to the Queen, take a load off, sit down, go up to Scotland, enjoy your remaining years. But, she's been born into the role that she's born into, and I get the impression that she is determined to do that till her dying day.
I remember years ago, one of her private secretaries telling me that Queen Juliana of the Netherlands had announced her abdication in favour of her son. And when the Queen was told this news, she said, ha, typical Dutch. So I don't think she's going anywhere anytime soon, even at the age of 95.
Prince Charles is the longest serving and most dutiful Prince of Wales in history. Despite being embroiled in some elements of controversy, he has brought radical and pioneering ideas to the forefront, all while showing a genuine care and consideration for their outcomes. There is no one more trained or more well prepared to take on the top job, and that is why he is the man who we will one day be proud to call our King.